Friday, I wanted to talk about rendering a little bit. So you don't have to do a rendering for this project, but I thought if you wanted to do a rendering, I would show you how. I kind of went over 3D view in another video, so I'm not going to do that. I've got a 3D view that I want to render, and now I want to set up the light and the material. So what I do when I want to set up the lighting is, of course, I turn on my shadows in this view. So if they're off, I turn them on. This is actually quite a nice light right here, but it's actually a default lighting, and I prefer to have the actual sun lighting it because you will get some strange effects sometimes with the default lighting. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a overall view. Now I know where this view is taken from, but sometimes it's hard to go in and figure out where you want the sun in such a close-up view. So I have to go to a backed off view. So I'm going to go to my default 3D view. And I'm going to zoom in sort of in the same area, you know, the same kind of view where I'm going to be looking. And then I'm going to turn my sun on and my sun path on. So you can click your sun path and it will come on. And you want your shadows on for sure. And then you can come in and get kind of close and maybe a little bit further so we can see what it's doing. And go to your sun settings. And if you go to your sun settings, it will give you the time and location. I wish I could had a bigger screen, but I don't. Typically, you'd be able to have this on screen at the same time. What you might have when you open it up is it's set to default lighting. So if I hit apply, right, that's what we had was the default lighting in the previous one. And we want to actually go to a still because the default lighting is just random angles of azimuth and altitude. And so I want to go to still, and that's going to give me the option to pick a location, and you can go to geolocate it here, a date, and a time. I don't know why it's on 2009. That seems a little weird, but I don't know. I'll just leave it there. But if you do that, and I'm going to kind of move this up a little bit so we can see it, and then you hit apply, it'll apply those settings, right? So now you can kind of change the time and hit apply and move it around until you get something that you like, you know, like maybe 1045. What does that look like? So we know that we'll be looking in through here. So that's not bad, you know, 940, maybe 10. So what does 10 look like? Maybe 1030, 1015. You know, 930. Oops. And I'm typing it in here instead of using the up and down arrows. And apply. And you can just sort of move around until you get what you want. And once you get what you want, you can save the settings. And I'll name this view 2. Click OK, and you'll see it'll add it over here to my other saved presets. And I can click OK and now go back to the 3D view and actually go to my sun settings here and pick still, and I can pick that view and hit apply. Now you could go in and sort of adjust it in here and at least starting from a decent point. So you get your light the way that you want it. And now we want to do a material application. Actually, I already have a material that'll work fairly well, but if you want to change the material, you can go to the Manage, Object Styles. And again, I would use a uniform material, not like brick or anything that has a really specific texture map. So I'm in Object Styles. I'm going to go to Imported Objects, and I've got Porcelain Ivory on that. So if I left click on this, and I have to say the materials tend to really slow this down, so I'm not sure why it gets buggy with the materials. But in the Graphics tab here, this is what it's going to look like when you select Shaded in the viewport, or a surface pattern or a cut pattern, unless it's been overridden. If you go to the Appearance tab, this is what it's going to look like when it renders, right? So this is the Appearance tab is Render, and Graphics tab is Viewport. So that's the porcelain. I'm going to click OK and click OK, and now I'm going to render it. So to render it, you click this little teapot. It brings up your rendering dialog box. Start out with like a draft or a medium at screen resolution, so it's actually going to render this screen size. and it's going to use exterior sun, right? And then it's going to use sun setting view too, because we set that there, and then it's going to put a few clouds in the background. So you can click render, and a rendering progress dialog box will come up, and it will start to render that guy. Right? So there's that view rendered. Okay. Now there's a couple of other things you can do, like you can go to adjust exposure, and if you want it to be a little darker, you can move that slider over and hit apply, and it'll darken it. If you want to change it to like a cooler color and hit apply, you can do that. Right? You can pull the saturation all the way down and make it a grayscale, which always works really well. Or you can make it a lot more intense and it'll get really green, right? So you can play with these and adjust that a little bit. So if I hit apply, let's say I'm happy with that. I click OK. Now I can save this to project, so I'll click that. And it's going to ask me what I want to name it, and I'll just name it View 1. Okay. You can also export it. So you can export it as a JPEG right there. So I'll export that to my desktop as 3D View 1, and I'll click Save. And now I'm going to close my rendering dialog box, and it will close that. And if I scroll down, you'll see I have renderings, and there's my View 1 under renderings. And so now I can actually go to my composition page, and if I wanted to replace that, I could drag my View 1 out there, and you can adjust the size of it. So right now I'm just going to get rid of that viewport title. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to pick the crop box, and I'm just going to pull it in right now, and then I'll move it down. Now you can adjust it over here. If you knew that you wanted the maximum size to be 6 inches, you could do that. And now you have an image on your sheet. You, on the next installment, will import an image from outside of Revit onto a sheet.